Well, I've never been more excited about a season, that's for sure, as the 26th season, coming off the disappointing year that we had last year and having a whole summer to recruit. Boy, I've never seen a staff work so hard at recruiting as we did this summer. But, in our individual workouts, it seems to have really paid off. We've got some really good-looking ball players out there. We've got some good arms. Very excited about getting fall practice started. Officially, we start tomorrow, so I'm sure you all understand this, but for those that don't, the way that the NCAA allows us to practice is up until the first official day, we're allowed 8 hours a week, 4 hours of individual skills work and 4 hours of strength and conditioning. That period will end today. Today's the last day of that. So tomorrow begins what we call the 20-hour work week, I guess they call it the non-traditional segment, but in season. So we're allowed 20 hours a week. We have to still give 1 day off a week. But this week is a unique week, and so let me explain that to you. We have fall break beginning on Thursday. So I am actually giving the guys off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to take a break, to go home, say hello to their families again, have a little bit of rest and relaxation. Hopefully they'll work out on their own and stay in shape. But the reason I'm starting tomorrow is because, and this is complicated, but the NCAA requires us to give 2 days off during the 8-hour weeks and 1 day off during the 20-hour weeks, but we also have to have an additional 14 days off called flex off days. I could count the fall break as long as we started practice officially before fall break began. So I can count Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as 4 of the 14 flex off days. That's why we're starting tomorrow. The reason we could also do that is the NCAA changed our fall practice from basically 27 days to 35 days. So not that you have throwaway days, that's not the idea of it, but we can stay on our schedule of what we're doing with the pitchers, which is has been exclusively side sessions up to this point. When we come back next week, actually, we come back Sunday night and practice, but we'll start on Monday where we'll do pitcher against hitter simulation games. So that there won't be a full team behind. We'll have normal workouts without scrimmage games starting a week from yesterday. Okay, does everybody understand that? And then we'll start scrimmage games on October 19th, and we'll scrimmage 5 days a week. The reason why we scrimmage so frequently is because there's several reasons, actually. The first reason is I believe that the skills work and that the fundamentals work that you do really is useless if you don't apply them into games. It's easy to be very good at PFPs, pitchers fielding practice. It's good at doing cutoffs, when you know that we're working on cutoffs. But then when players have to react in the heat of the game, that's when they really execute the fundamentals, learn to execute the fundamentals. And that's what the scrimmage games are for. That was the first reason. The second reason is because I want to create competition within the team. And when you have competition within the team where you create a virtual game-like situation, then I think you get a better reading on where each player is, which players maybe have the lead to be starting players going into the spring semester, and also just to bring out the competitiveness in the players, and I think that brings out the best in them. The third reason why we're doing it is because we want to identify who should be the best candidates to be starting pitchers going forward. And that's why we changed our practice timeline this year. Instead of typically where I would have started fall practice the third weekend in September, we're not starting until October 19th. And the reason we did that is to give Coach Rooney much more time to build the pitchers up and to do side sessions so that when we do go out and scrimmage, that they'll be ready to throw 3-inning outings. That'll be the maximum they'll throw, but it'll also be, I wouldn't say the minimum because some guys won't be doing 3 innings all the time, but they'll be capable of doing 3 innings. And the reason I'm doing that is I feel like we have maybe 10 candidates to be starting pitchers. And when you only have them throw in 1 inning at a time, you kind of get a false sense of what they're capable of doing. They can get a couple of pop-ups and a ground ball on 9 pitches, and then they're done for the day. I think when they throw a 3-inning outing, they can show you several things. They can show you, number one, that they can dominate an inning with a short amount of pitches, which is critical to be able to pitch deep into a game. They also can show you that when they do get in a jam, that they have a repertoire of pitches to be able to pitch out of a jam. And number 3, when you turn the lineup over, it requires you to use more pitches. You can't get by with just 1, maybe even 2 pitches. And when you have to face a hitter a couple of times, I think you have to pitch them differently maybe the second time around. I want to see who's capable of doing that. And so what I want them to do, those 10 candidates to be a starting pitcher, I want them to be able to do a starter's routine where they can throw long catch in the outfield. Then they can shorten up and throw what we call a short box, a flat ground. And then they go to the bullpen with the pitching coach, and then they come to the dugout and sit for a minute before they take the field with their team. So they really simulate a real starter's attitude. And then after 5 weeks of fall scrimmages and a couple of games against other teams, we'll sit down and we'll kind of reduce the number down from 10 to who knows what that number will be. It might be down to 4, and we'll know who our starting pitchers are going into the spring semester. It might be down to 6, and we'll keep it competitive in the preseason in January and February. So that's why we changed the calendar a little bit, and that's what the goal is. And so what we'll do is we'll start on October 19th. We'll practice 6 days a week. We'll scrimmage 5 days a week in weeks. There's 5 weeks total. In weeks 1, 2, and 4, we'll scrimmage 5 days a week. In week 3, we have 2 games. Sunday, November 2nd, we play Charlotte here, and then Thursday, November 6th, we're going to College of Charleston. So we'll only have 1 additional scrimmage that week. And then in week 5, we're going to have a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, 3-game Garnet versus Black World Series, and then we'll be finished on November 20th.
Okay. Questions for Coach?
Boy, it is warm in here. I see you waving yourself back there. I'm so sorry. We should have checked this morning on the air conditioning.
Paul, just looking at the recruiting class that you brought in and to now, were there any additions, subtractions from the list that we saw earlier?
I don't remember when we met. I don't think there were any changes. We have, okay, so I think I explained this when I met with you all at the end of the summer about the designated student athletes. Did I talk about that? I think I did. So the roster limit is 34, but we actually have 37. We actually had 39, I think, when we met, but I don't remember if we met before the draft or after the draft, but we lost 2 to the draft. 2 freshmen ended up signing professionally, so 39 to 37. So we have 37 now. One of those players, Brandon Cromer, is out for the year. He'll be a medical red shirt. So we actually have 36 players on the active roster right now.
Paul, how do you feel about the catching situation heading into the year? Obviously, you guys added Reese Moore, Jake Randolph, bunch of guys. You have Gavin Braylon, Talmadge coming back. How do you feel about that group overall heading into the fall?
Well, you started out with the most difficult question, Jack. I'm sorry that you started with that one. It's still a concern of mine, quite frankly. Thank goodness Talmadge LaCroix is back. So we limited our recruiting because of him coming back. So had he not come back, we'd probably have an additional new catcher. But Talmadge is looking fine. Gavin Braylon has gotten a lot stronger, and I think he's a good receiver. I think he's a gritty kid. You know, he doesn't hit for a lot of power, but, you know, he puts the bat on the ball. Unfortunately, Reese Moore and Jake Randolph have a little bit of knee situations that we're dealing with right now. So they're actually not capable of practicing and haven't been for about a week. So we'll see what the tests show on them. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. I'm a little more concerned with Reese Moore. He's going to have an MRI on Wednesday on his knee just to make sure there's nothing structurally wrong in there. So right now, you know, you start out with 4 catchers, you're already down to 2. It's one of those positions that caused me to lose sleep every night because I've been through this. You know, I always tell people, you know, when you're old, there's advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages are obvious. The advantages are you've been through everything. And one year when I was coaching earlier in my career, I remember we went through 3 catchers in a 5-day period. So you can never have enough quality catching in my mind because depth-wise I'm talking about. So we're just going to have to see how those 2 kids, one is Randolph's got a little hamstring pull that's, I think, going to be okay within a few days. The other one is a little bit more concerning of me just because you don't know if the structure is okay. But hopefully he'll be fine and be able to get back into fall practicing. You know, we were really high on him when we recruited him, of course, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But Talmadge looks better and Gavin looks better as well. So those are our guys, and we're going to go with them.
You mentioned the recruiting and how well, you know, all your assistants and you guys did through that. And then you mentioned a couple like little tweaks with the pitching stuff. I'm curious, like from this year or even previously in your career, like how has your process changed when it comes to the off season?
Well, obviously the transfer portal is a huge difference. Last summer I was here for a short time. We scrambled and, you know, we were able to get a few guys, but this year was much different from a standpoint of getting an early start on it. And, you know, I can't emphasize enough how hard and how great Terry Rooney is at the whole recruiting coordination type thing. He has an amazing relationship with all of the travel ball coaches, with the scouting profession. And I know this sounds like a bad word to you, but it's really the way it is now, but with the agents. You know, every kid has an agent now or an advisor. I don't even think they mind if we call them agents now. But the reality is everybody has one. And so he works so hard on having relationships with all of those guys and sometimes girls. But, you know, it's just the way that the process is now when in recruiting. You know, you obviously deal with the player and his family, but when it comes to, you know, business aspects of it, you're dealing with the agent now, and that's just the reality. So that process has changed dramatically. I assume you were asking about recruiting, but are you talking about even?
Yeah, just like the offseason. You had mentioned kind of wanting to get the pitchers. You said the one inning didn't give you enough. So I was wondering if there were other things like that in the process of trying to get the team ready.
Well, that's the big one, you know, because, we have so many new players this year, 27 new players on our team, 26 really active. And, you know, I just felt like we just needed to spend time individually with them all, not just the pitchers, like Terry's working with them and having a lot of side sessions and building them up endurance-wise to be able to throw 3 innings. But even with the position players, you know, from an offensive standpoint, obviously Monty is working with the guys and getting a lot more time. But even defensively, and we're going to work, we've been working really hard on just the fundamentals of the game. Some of the things that I thought we really need to improve upon from last year, just pitchers fielding practice, for example. You know, I just wasn't happy last year with the way we fielded our position. You know, once a pitcher releases the ball, he becomes another infielder, and he can help himself get outs. And you know, so we've worked real hard on that already in the preseason or in pre-fall practice. You know what I'm talking about. The cutoffs, double cutoffs, relays. I think we have 8 really good infielders. I normally don't include Bo and any other first basemen as infielders. When I talk about infielders, I'm talking pretty much about second, short, and third. But because I'm working Will Craddock at first base, and he really is an infielder for other positions, I'll call him eight infielders. I think we've got 8 really good infielders. And most of them are transfers, except for Will Craddock, and Bo is back. Bo and KJ are back from last year, but the other guys are transfers, so they're older. They've been through college baseball, and I think the competition is going to be really good. I think we have 2 outstanding shortstops in KJ Scobie and Eric Parker. They both look tremendous out there, really. And like I told Scobie, the best thing he can root for is to somebody emerge as a really good third baseman so he can stay at shortstop, because we know what he can do at third base, and Eric Parker is certainly a great option at shortstop. So we're just going to kind of see how that all plays out this fall. We've been doing a lot of live defense with guys taking batting practice to see how they play. Some guys take just practice fungos and look good, but then a third baseman can be out there for an extended period of time, get one ball the entire game, and that play may have a great determination on winning or losing the game. So, already we're starting to see some trends. There's some players that have shown even better than I thought they were when we recruited them. I hate to start identifying them already before we have played any scrimmage games, but for example, Jack Reynolds, he has really shown well. Local kid, swings the bat with a lot of aggressiveness, looks good in the infield. He could play a multitude of positions. Little Tyler, I got to quit calling him little. He's not that little, and nobody's little compared to me. But Tyler Bach is a kid that transferred from Wofford. Just in the drills, he's shown, some really uncanny ability to run balls down in the outfield. He seems to handle the bat very well. But then Aaron Jamison is another center fielder that we recruited. He started at West Virginia University, went to Fort Scott Community College in Kansas, and he's shown well in addition. So I think we've got really a slew of really good ball players, and the margin between the guys as I see them right now is very slim. And what I'm hoping will happen is during our scrimmage games, some guys will start to separate themselves in a positive way. I think they're all going to be good players. It's just a matter of, can somebody do something extraordinary? That's what I've always looked for in players, is the guys that could do something extraordinary to stand out. That's why Bo Hollins played so much last year. That's why KJ Scobie played so much last year. Is I thought they were both extraordinary defenders at those positions. And so that's why I stuck with him early, or went with him early and stuck with him throughout the season. But now we want to see somebody in an extraordinary way hit. It's like to see several guys do that, actually. And that's how they would separate themselves from other people.
Couple things for you real quick. With Reese, did he get hurt in a practice, or was this just kind of wear and tear that his kind of?
I think it was just a freak injury. He just threw a ball. We were having the catchers throw to the bases, and when he stepped, he just felt something awkward in his knee, so we shut him down right there.
Gotcha. And then you touched on shortstop with KJ and Eric. Just wanted to get you to expand on that a little bit. What have you liked out of those two guys, and how do you want to see them continue to progress in the scrimmages?
Well, they have to play good defense, obviously, to play shortstop, and both of them have shown an ability to do that. Eric, in particular, this kid is a really good-looking kid, good athlete, very coachable. He was like a 14th round draft choice out of high school, but only had 4 at-bats last year at Georgia. But a lot of people think highly of him. And when he first got here, I thought there were some adjustments that he needed to make, and we've worked with him really hard, and he's made the adjustments. As I mentioned, he was very coachable. He seemed a little erratic at the very beginning, but then we played a little Coach pitched scrimmage the other day, and he was involved in 3 double play turns and made some really nice plays. I think Scobie, is just, a tremendous defensive player. He's made the switch from third to shortstop seamlessly. His body conditioning is much better, so his agility is much better. His range is good. He's got the best hands you'll ever see, really, in college baseball, and he's got a strong, accurate throwing arm. So at the end of the day, it might come down to hitting. And I think if Scobie hits more consistently than he did last year, he could be a really good draft choice this year. He's a draft-eligible sophomore. But Eric comes to us as a shortstop, and the possibility always exists that we can move him to another position if he's one of the 9 best guys. So my goal with every team that I've ever coached is to put the 9 best guys out there, and regardless of position. Obviously catcher is a unique position. Pitcher is a different category. But, if certain positions have to play really good defense, like the left side of the infield, center field. So, with those caveats, I still say you put the 9 best players out there. And that's why, you play the scrimmage games, because I'd like to see every hitter get close to 70 or 75 at-bats this fall and get a lot of chances in the field and run the bases frequently. So, time will tell if somebody separates themselves from the other guys. Right now, it's too close to call.
Is Riley Goodman full go for the fall, and what are kind of your expectations for him in his first, real outings coming after the missing last year?
Well, yes, 100%. Jack, he's 100% ready to go. He pitched actually this summer for, I think he had 4 starts, if I'm not mistaken, with the Blowfish over in Lexington. And he didn't pitch extended, and he won't pitch extended this fall, but he's one of those 10 that I mentioned earlier as far as candidates to be starting pitchers. The most he'll go is 3 innings, but his bullpen sessions have been very, very impressive, as have many of the guys. We're going to have some good arms out there. There's no question about it, and guys that have other pitches. So the competition is going to be very good. It's hard for me right now to even take a guess at who the rotation will be. Obviously, Jake McCoy's got a head start on everybody. Not only did he start 14 games last year for us, but he went up to Cape Cod and pitched 3 really good, one spectacular game and a couple other pretty solid games. So being a junior, I would say he'd have an inside track on being one of the starting pitchers when we open up the first weekend of the season. But he's going to have to earn it too. He's about 10 days behind most of the other guys because he did pitch this summer. We shut him down after that, so he's just a little bit delayed in where he is compared to the other guys. But Riley's certainly a candidate. He looks good, and there's a lot of guys that look good out there. The depth, I think, is going to be much, much better than last year.
You mentioned bringing in 20 new pieces, and I imagine at times you probably felt like a MLB GM of trying to get the roster and the cap and kind of all that stuff. I guess what was that process with you and Terry and Monty of going and getting these portal, but also knowing that, hey, we can't spend $8 million on every guy and trying to get the numbers right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, those are some good exaggerations there. I wish we had that. Sometimes you do feel like a general manager putting a roster together nowadays, but this is the reality of the way it is. I still believe to have sustained success for a long period of time, you still have to build your team with young kids. And we have a really outstanding class of commitments for the 26 high school graduates. We're in the midst of recruiting the 27 graduates. So every year I'm expecting 8 to 10 freshmen in there. This year's freshman class is an aberration. I really believe that, unless we got killed by the draft, which is possible because the caliber of the players that you're signing, if they're good enough to help us win games at South Carolina, they're generally good enough to be considered for the draft, so you sweat that out. But there's no way I'll ever give up on trying to build a foundation of the team. It's just that in the transition, it's a little bit more difficult to do right away. So assuming that we do that, there's still going to be a need for transfer players. And this is just the nature of the game. And when you're in a transition period of time, it's obvious the reasons you need to do that. But if you just look around and see very established programs out there that, are replacing 20 or more players every year. In our league, I think in our league there were at least 4 teams that have more new players than we have. So, and those were, I'm talking about teams that were ranked in the top 10 all year last year. So it's kind of the way it is now, and when you recruit the freshmen, the challenge is, will they be patient, and wait their turn, so to speak, and let themselves develop? And then the other challenge is if they become really good right away, then other schools are calling their agents and trying to get them to go into the portal because they'll pay them more money. So it's a unique time in college athletics. There's no question about it. But you roll with the punches and you adapt and do what you got to do. And I still think the future is very bright, and I think we're going to have a good season this season. And it's going to be it's fun. I will say this about these transfer portal kids. 2 years ago, I was in my second year of retirement, my first retirement. The next one will be my last. But I was in my first retirement, my second year, and I did a weekend series, Florida State at Virginia, for the ACC network. I was like the color man, which was a fun experience. But Brian O'Connor, who's the new coach at Mississippi State, he and I are very, very close friends and always will be. Brian was my pitching coach for 9 years at Notre Dame, and we will always remain very, very close. When we play each other, our job will take priority over our friendship, of course, and my loyalty will, of course, be to our players and our staff and our university. But those 3 nights that I was there in Charlottesville, I stayed the evening in his home, and we had dinner together and so forth. And I said, Brian, I didn't realize until I researched your team when we came up here that you have 11 transfers on your team. What's that like? And I was shocked by his answer. His answer to me was, Paul, you can't believe how grateful these kids are to have the opportunity to be here, how their attitude is so positive, that they're leaders of the team. One of the kids was the kid that pitched for the he pitched for the Red Sox the other night, and he had been at West Point Army for 2 years, and I saw him in his junior year, his first year at Virginia, and he started the 3rd game, and Brian was telling me how grateful those kids were and what a positive influence they had been on the team. So my attitude about the transfer portal has been different ever since I had that conversation with Brian. And honestly, when I go out there and work with these kids, it doesn't feel like the first month you've been with them. They're very receptive to coaching. They have very positive attitudes, and I just think as we go forward, we're always going to depend on some transfers just because of the nature of the business now. But I still think we need to have kids that grow in the program as well.
Paul, kind of with that, 26 newcomers, you always worry about the chemistry of a bunch of new faces. Have you and the coaching staff had to put in any, or want to put in any more team building exercises or things you might not normally do to kind of accommodate that?
Well, no different than you would do in any year, really. And at the end of the day, the chemistry of the team is I think it's a very important aspect. And I spend a lot. I dropped the ball a little bit last year because I just took for granted some veteran players on the team would have very positive attitudes and be upbeat, and so forth. And I didn't have my thumb on the pulse of a few of the players and where attitudes turn negative. That's usually something I'm pretty good at as far as having a sense for where potential problems may be in the chemistry of the team. But even last year we did some things. We went over to Fort Jackson for the workout. We had early morning conditioning. I mean, we did a lot of things that you would think that would help the chemistry of the team. And this past Saturday, the whole team on no football game, no practice. They all went to a venue downtown and played pool and did some different things at this. They did it all together. But at the end of the day, you're going to have good chemistry, or a better chance to have good chemistry if you win enough. And if you're not winning enough, it would take Houdini to keep the chemistry good. And that's just the reality. And last year, we didn't win enough games to make the kids that maybe were teetering on that attitude plank, so to speak, to have a good attitude. They some of them just didn't want to, be on board. So that's just the way it is. Every team's going to have a few disgruntled players, because if you're not in the lineup, or if you're playing and you're not playing well, it's somebody else's fault. And that's been typical of every team and every sport and across the country forever. So it's something that you're conscious of. But we're going to do the typical things that we normally do with trying to build team chemistry, and then we'll win more games this spring, and that'll help a lot.
Kind of going off that, who is standing out so far? Who do you think you might be leaning towards in terms of leadership?
Oh, in terms of leadership? Well, obviously the returning guys. We only have 10 returning guys. We have 6 returning pitchers and 4 returning position players. And you like to think that guys like Talmadge and KJ and Bo and Gavin would be leaders among the position players. And you'd like to think guys like Jake McCoy and Parker Marlott and Brendan Stone and Riley Goodman, even though he didn't pitch last year, Zach Russell, Cooper Parks have had great attitudes and have been setting a good example out there. So you'd like to think your veteran guys would take the lead, but I don't think that's even necessary. I mean, I've had teams in past years where freshmen were the leaders of the team because they could be counted on. When they went out there in the big games, they played better. So I think that's kind of an evolving thing. You can lead by example of your practice efforts, your work ethic in practice and how you come every day. You can be vocal in terms of that type of thing. Like a kid like Bradley Hodges is already kind of asserting himself with some guys when he doesn't see some guys doing things with discipline or doing them the right way. He seems to be a kid that's not afraid to speak up. And that's always a challenge, when you think about it. It's somebody that between the ages of 18 and 22 years old having enough self-confidence in themselves, if they see something that shouldn't be happening, for them to police themselves. It doesn't make you real popular with your teammates. You're putting your relationships at risk when you do that. So it takes an awful lot of courage and self-confidence to do that. But I think as time will go on, I'll have a better feel for that. We actually haven't even been together as a full team, and probably won't. Well, I know we won't be until a week from yesterday. Next Sunday will be our first really full team practice. But even the next week, because of the simulated games, we won't have the whole team out there even during that next week. So when we start on October 19th with scrimmages, that'll be the first time that the whole team will really be together, going through practice together with scrimmage games and that type of thing. So I think as time will go on, the leaders will emerge.
Paul, on that note, how much more comfortable and confident do you feel that this team will look and act and play the way you want it to now versus you did a year ago this time?
Well, a year ago I had a lot of confidence at this time, but we did some good things. I mean, we went 22-0 against every team that wasn't in the SEC or ACC last year. Unfortunately, that's not how they they grade you here. You have to do it in the big games against the best teams, and that's the way it should be. So, last year I was confident, and I thought we had some really good players. When the SEC season rolled around, I thought we were very competitive in the Clemson series in the third weekend of the season. We just didn't have enough to get us over the hump at the end of the games when we needed a big hit or we needed a pitcher to shut them down or make a play. But that, I thought enthusiasm-wise and energy-wise and all that stuff, we were right there. And then when we got into the SEC, I think when we lost that first, not the first game, but the final game against Oklahoma, when we could have made a play to end the game and won the series, it took a little bit of wind out of our sails. And whereas we were kind of playing maybe a little better than really we should have at one point, we kind of settled back into not being quite as full of a team that we needed to be to win the games in the SEC. But this year I think is going to be totally different. Just what I see in practice, the quality of the arms, the repertoire of the pitches, the depth of pitching that we'll have. I made a comment that one day we had 8 infielders taking batting practice. 4 were taking ground balls and 4 were hitting, and then they flip-flopped. And so they were out there for a half an hour, and I made a comment to a couple of people that I felt like more balls were hit out of the ballpark in batting practice in that half hour than maybe I saw in 3 or 4 week period last year. Just the I don't know, just the ability, the physicalness. I think you'll see a big difference with it. Obviously we had some really great players like Nathan Hall and Ethan Petrie, and we probably didn't have quite enough. Whereas I think this year, like I mentioned already, I think it's going to be hard to choose the 4 starting infielders out of those 8 guys. Could say the same thing with the 5 outfielders. Choosing the best 3 there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun when you have tough decisions at a high level with players.
Any other questions for Coach?
All right. Again, I apologize about the warmth, but it's good to see everybody.